started playing video games in a time before the internet. It was an age of floppy disks, cartridges, and then the early days of CDs. This meant that games just didn't get updates. You were stuck with the game that you had just physically purchased. The internet changed all of this, especially when it became fast enough that people were able to download whole games from the internet fairly quickly. I don't say this in some cliched longing for the good old days. I say this because the game I'm looking at today would simply not exist, at least in its current state, without the advent of the internet and the ability to add content to the game after launch. And that game is Terraria. Terraria was released over 12 years ago, and the game that we have now has so much more content than when it was released at launch. It is a game that the developers have invested a huge amount of time, effort, and love into as they've continually added content, quality of life improvements, and of course, bug fixes. It's a game that has had so many final updates that it's become a bit of a joke among those who know the game. For those who may not be as familiar with this game, here is a chance to see the game and what I think about it with 12 years of updates under its belt. Terraria is a 2D action-adventure sandbox game that was developed by Relogic. It was originally released for PC in 2011, but has been released on many other devices since then. In terms of modern consoles, it was released for the PS4 and Xbox One in 2014 and was released for the Switch in 2019. Terraria has a wide variety of prices depending on your platform of choice. It is $9.99 on Steam for PC, it is $19.99 for PS4 and Xbox One, and it is $29.99 on Switch. Terraria is rated T, which seems a bit high personally. I think the biggest issue with the game is that when defeating enemies they can blow up in pieces, but I don't think it quite warrants a T rating, and you can turn it off in-game to make that not an option, so a T just seems really high. An E10 seems to be much more fitting, but I'm not the one who rated it. Terraria doesn't have a narrative or story to follow, so I'll just jump right into the gameplay. So you start Terraria by creating your character. You can choose your name, clothing style, hair, and the colors for your eyes, hair, and the various parts of your outfit. After this, you need to create your first world. You can choose the name, size of your world, the difficulty, and what type of evil biome you want, corruption or crimson, which are similar but have different enemies and color schemes. There's also the ability to put in a world seed if you want a specific world. The developers have added some secret world seeds to the game that have special characteristics and can be a bit crazy to play. So if you know those, you can input those here and experience some very interesting alternative gameplay elements. One thing to note here is that characters are not bound to a world. You can use the same character to go to different worlds you have created and have them bring resources to any other worlds you have. The only limitation on this is that Journey characters can only go to Journey worlds. This is due to the fact that Journey is Terraria's version of a sandbox or creative mode, and that would really kind of break the game to let those characters travel anywhere they like. Once you create your character and world, you'll spawn into the world with a few tools. If you're familiar with the sandbox genre, for example Minecraft, you'll be familiar with a lot of the mechanics here. You have a pickaxe to mine with or remove furniture or items from their location, an axe to chop down trees, and a sword to attack enemies. There will also be an NPC spawned next to you called the Guide, who will give you hints and also show you what you can craft using the items in your inventory. There is so much to discover and explore in Terraria that I don't want to give too much detail, but I do want to outline a few systems in the game that are good to understand. The first that I'll tackle is exploration. Since Terraria is a 2D world, navigation is much simpler than if it were a 3D game. You can move to the right or left, dig underground, or build up into the sky. As you explore, you'll find trees to cut down for wood, ores to mine, pots to contain basic items, or chests that can contain more unique items and weapons. As you explore, you'll find different biomes like forests, deserts, snowy areas, a jungle, oceans on either boundary of the map, and either corruption or crimson. Each biome will have a different type of tree to cut down, as well as different enemies to defeat, and some will even have unique chests that will contain items only found in that biome. As you dig downwards, there are also different levels to the underground, with more difficult enemies and rarer ores being found the further down you go, with the underworld being the bottom of the map. This area is filled with lava and some difficult enemies. There are also special little areas throughout the underground map that you can find that are unique, like glowing mushroom areas, marble, and other fun discoveries that you can kind of find as you're exploring the underground. Now, as you collect and discover items, you'll want to build a location for crafting and storing all of your goods. Using your materials, you'll be able to craft stations like workbenches and forges to help you build items, build chests for storage, and also materials to build yourself a home. Early on, this is easily mostly done by just cutting down some trees and building a house out of wood. But for those who love to decorate, there are a ton of available building materials as you progress through the game. You won't just want to build a house for yourself though, as NPCs will also move into proper housing locations. A proper house is considered a room with a table, a chair, lighting, and enclosed with walls, which includes a background wall that you can also put up. Your first house will be where the guide moves to, but as you build other houses and achieve certain goals in the game, you'll have new NPCs that move in and have their own unique benefits. You'll have a merchant that sells you some early items, a nurse that will heal you for money, and a whole bunch more. You'll find money by killing enemies, finding it in pots or chests, or by selling your items to vendors. When it comes to crafting, it's hard to give a lot of details. Half the fun is trying to see what combos there are, what you can kind of put together and make. But even if I wanted to give a lot of information, it would take quite a bit of time to give you a full account for all the things you can make in Terraria. You'll probably want to get acquainted with the Terraria wiki at some point when playing the game. One thing that will let you know that an item, weapon, or accessory can be used in crafting is that it will have the label material in its description. You can then talk to the guide to see what that material can make and what you'll need to have in addition to make those items. It's a helpful system in game, but loading up the wiki will probably be a lot quicker if you're okay with doing that. The last of the basic systems I want to cover is combat. At first, your combat options are fairly limited. You start with a sword, and most of your early combat will be of the melee type. However, as you progress in the game, you will find other types of weapons as well. You will, of course, find more powerful swords, as well as other melee weapons like spears, ball and chains, and even yo-yos. In addition to melee weapons, you'll also find ranged weapons like bows and guns, magic weapons that can do all sorts of different things depending on what the item is, and summons that will create a familiar for you and will help you attack enemies. There will also be armor that you can make. Like, a lot of the early armor is fairly standard, it just increases your defense, but later on you can kind of find armor sets that will help you kind of make a certain class that you want to build. These will allow you to focus on melee, ranged, magic, or summoning. In addition to the wide arsenal of weapons and armor, you also have accessories that you can equip for a variety of bonuses. Some will help you with traversal and allow you to move faster, fly, or not take fall damage. Other accessories are more combat oriented and will increase damage, regeneration, or reduce knockback. There are also ones that give a variety of random effects. These can be, you get more money when you kill an enemy, you can have an increased pickup radius, or all kinds of other little things like that. Certain accessories can also be combined and crafted into new accessories that can give the effect of both previous accessories and sometimes even give additional benefits as well. Again, the ones that can be combined will have material in its description on its tooltip. This is a general overview of the basics for Terraria. But there is so much more to it that it's kind of hard to say more than this. What I will say about Terraria is it has an excellent sense of progression. You will start off slow with limited weapons and items to craft, but as you explore, find ores and chests, you will start to gain power. You can find items that increase your health and will make it easier for you to survive longer. And once you gain things like this and you start to gain power, you'll find more options available to you. As you discover the various boss monsters in the game, you'll get even stronger once you can defeat them and use the items that they drop, which will then in turn open up even more of the game. Now, after you defeat the boss that is in the underworld, the game will unlock what they call hard mode. This mode will unlock a way to create 3 new ores in your world, create a new biome called the Hallowed, makes harder enemies spawn into the game, and will unlock new bosses that you can fight. Now, as you defeat the bosses in hard mode, these will often unlock more and more for you to fight until you get to the final boss, the Moonlord. Now, in addition to bosses, there are also special events that happen in the game that will have unique enemies, and some will even have special bosses. The first one you'll experience most likely in the game is the Goblin Invasion, where a whole variety of types of goblins will attack, and you'll have to defeat a certain amount before the attack ends. These events will trigger when certain requirements in the progression have been met, so the harder events will occur after more difficult goals have been met. All these things makes the way that Terraria handles progression really cool and makes the world feel like it is evolving as you get stronger. Now, it doesn't mean that there are no more of the weaker enemies. You can go and find them and kind of destroy them as you get stronger. So it keeps both aspects of it. It doesn't make you continually feel weak, but it gives you this good sense of like, oh, these are things I fought and I remember these, and now I can just take them out super easy, even though I used to struggle with them. But there are still other creatures and monsters in the game that will give you a challenge. So it's a nice sense of being able to feel like you're stronger, but also still always giving you a little bit of challenge as you progress. The gameplay in Terraria is just really satisfying, but I would say that it could be overwhelming for new players as well. There are just so many items, weapons, armors, accessories, and things to discover that some people may just feel lost and not sure about the best way to move forward. The control scheme can also be a little complicated as well, especially if you're playing on the console. Trying to navigate the menus and maps with the controllers is a bit clunky and can get a bit confusing. Personally though, I do find combat slightly easier with the controllers, just being able to kind of move a little bit more fluid. But the good thing is that, like, regardless of what system you play on, the controls are very customizable, so you can make a control scheme that makes sense to you. Now, personally, these things are kind of trivial. They don't really take any enjoyment away from the game for me, but I do feel like they are things that people need to keep in mind when approaching this game. It can be a little bit much for those coming in blind. However, I think that Terraria just presents worlds that are a lot of fun to explore and progress in. There are so many things to find, different ways to play, that you can just sink a lot of hours into this game. Now, I don't tend to be someone who buys the same game for multiple platforms, but Terraria is one game that I've bought on 3 different platforms: PC, PlayStation 3, and PlayStation 4. I put a ridiculous number of hours into this game over the years, and I'm sure I'll continue to put even more. Now, if you want to have even more ridiculous hours to put into this game, there is also a modding scene if you're playing on the PC. There are some pretty amazing mods out there that tweak existing content and or add all kinds of new content to the game. So not only can you spend hours in regular Terraria, but you can also find mods to explode your hours to even more ridiculous numbers if you so desire. So if you're on the PC, check out some of the mods out there, because there are some pretty good ones if that's kind of something you're interested in. Terraria is amazing in both its art style and sound direction. Terraria goes for a pixel style of art, but it is just a super beautiful style with all kinds of different biomes and building materials that make for some amazing combinations. There's just a level of detail to the pixel art that's just really impressive here. Characters and enemies are unique, they're nice looking. Bosses are particularly some very interesting models in the game and are really fun to see as you're taking them on. Also, with the amount of building materials, if you're an expert builder, you can really make some beautiful buildings and setups yourself. Sadly, this isn't a place where I'm very strong at, but if you look up pictures of what people have built, there are some impressive buildings and structures out there that people have made. I also feel like the art of Terraria has been updated and tweaked over the years to make the game even better looking. Whether it is adding new materials, adding colored lighting, changing backgrounds, redoing some of the pixel art on some items, the team has really put together a world that is just as enjoyable to look at as it is to play through. The music in Terraria is also phenomenal. There are so many different music tracks in the game. Each biome has at least one track. Each boss has a track for the battle. There is unique music for the various events that take place in the game. Each and every one of these tracks are memorable and do a good job fitting with what's going on while it's playing. Whether it is the exotic mystery of the jungle theme or the kind of icy peacefulness of the snow biome, the game is filled with amazing music that I love to listen to even when I'm not playing Terraria. Now, the sound effects for the game are also great. Whether it is the sound of water nearby, pots breaking when you hit them, the sound of enemies or bosses, the sound effects are just a nice touch to the game and add another great layer of sound that is more connected to what you're immediately doing, while the music reflects where you are or what you find yourself kind of in the middle of in a big picture, where the sound effects do a good job of showing you what you're actively involved in right now. So those combination just work really good together to create a nice environment with the sound and then the music and the overall art. Like, it's just a really great combination that the art style and sound has just had a lot of love put into it and is just really phenomenal. In general, I have had little problem with Terraria over the years. Like, I do believe that the game has crashed the most on the console versions for me, but to be honest, it's never been a regular occurrence, and my plays recently of the PlayStation 4 version haven't really had any issues. So while I can't say that Terraria has never crashed on me or that I've never had a bug or a glitch or anything like that, that's never really been a regular part of my experience with the game. So you may experience some random crashes here and there, but in my experience, you're not going to have that issue here with Terraria. Terraria has been fairly stable through my many years of playing it. Terraria is one of those games that I could play over and over again without ever getting tired of the game. Whether it is starting a new world with a new character and going through the progression of the world one more time, exploring a special seed, trying out a harder difficulty for a bit more challenge, going after the variety of achievements, or simply trying to build a world with amazing structures, there is so much that you can do. It is this variety that makes it a game that has nearly limitless potential and playtime. This isn't even mentioning how much the game has been updated since its initial release. The game is probably twice as big, if not more, than it was at initial release, and that's amazing. The developers have poured a lot of love and effort into the game, and it shows through every aspect of it. The beautiful pixel art, the fitting and memorable soundtrack, the ridiculous amount of content, and the satisfying sense of progression in the game demonstrates a game that is loved by its developers just as much as it's loved by those who play it. While the game may have a bit of a learning curve for those new to it, there are plenty of resources both in-game and on the internet that can help those starting out to figure out what to do. Getting into the world of Terraria may be a bit of work and a little bit of a slow start, but stick with it and I think it's totally worth it. Terraria is a game that I simply love and I'm giving it a 10 out of 10. Started playing it in July of 2011. That's when I bought it first on Steam. And all of these years later, I still love this game so much. I've also passed on a love of it to both of my kids as well. It's a game that we've played together quite a bit when they're home over the summers. We have a world that we've built. We just finished up beating the Moon Lord over this past summer. So it was a lot of fun for us to play as a family, not just even by myself. While there can be legitimate criticism about the state of gaming because of updates and patches, Terraria is a gem that shows how updates and patches can make a great game even better over time. I know there is talk of a Terraria 2 being thought about or maybe even in active development for the future. I know I would very much look forward to another entry and would hope that it is just as good as this one was. I guess we'll have to wait. Probably until they finally get done updating Terraria with an actual final update.